With that, we can go ahead and actually dive into it. We are doing another speedrun webinar. We've done 3 of these in the past. This is the 4th edition, and this one is going to be a little bit different. Typically, when I do the speedrun webinars, it's really about showing how much you can do in Ninja in just an hour. And in previous webinars, we've shown that you can do quite a bit in just an hour. I'm taking a slightly different approach here because to me, a migration is not necessarily about how quickly you can do it. It's very easy to deploy the agent and say, well, you've deployed, that's the migration, and kind of, dust your hands and say that's the end of it. I don't believe that. I think that most of the work in a migration goes into the planning. How do you meld whatever tools you're currently using into what NinjaOne is going to support? And how does that impact your best possible outcome, a better workflow, a more efficient workflow? So we're going to talk a lot about that. It's less about how much I can do in 1 hour and more about how much I can communicate to you in 1 hour. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the very first thing that I want to make sure everybody has available to them is in the top right here, you'll see the question mark. And if we go down, you'll see that we have the dojo, we've got a video library, we've got the ability to submit a help ticket. But what I really want to call out here is the NinjaOne Academy. So let's go ahead and click on that. This will jump you into a separate tab here, the NinjaOne Academy. If we go into trainings, you're going to see an optional training, migration from other RMM solutions. Now, this is the bit of boilerplate that you have to read through and acknowledge that you understand that there's some potential risks here with what we're providing. We're providing it as is. But and obviously things do change in other platforms over time. It can be difficult for us to maintain that accuracy as platforms continue to change. That being said, once you go through this little bit of boilerplate here and kind of complete that, at that point, you will get access to the full course. And so if we go in here to the full course, this is a wonderful outline of what to think about and how to prepare for any sort of migration. Oh, and I see a great question here from Josh. Josh says, if we do not have access to the Academy, is that something to bring up to our account manager, or can the super admin grant that? I would say reach out to your super admin first. If your super admin does not see it in their own, then they would need to contact the account manager and potentially get you added to the Academy. So if you do not have access to the Academy first, just confirm with your super admin that they also do not see it, and then contact your account manager to make sure that you get access. This is something that we want everybody to be able to utilize. There is a ton of really good information that I'm about to go over here, including some very valuable scripts. So yes, if you do not have access, please reach out to your account manager, assuming that if you are the admin of the account, excuse me, that you do not have access to that, yeah, definitely reach out to get that turned on because there is a ton of valuable information in here. Now, if we go in here, and I'll just click on the introduction. Over on the left, you're going to see quite a lot of information. We have our universal migration considerations, and then we have some platform-specific ones. Atera, ConnectWise RMM, and Datto RMM are what we have in place today. But I want to start with the universal considerations first, because again, I think that most of the work of a migration comes in the strategizing. It comes in the planning. And so I think this is the opportunity to decide, do you want to duplicate your exact workflows that you currently have in whatever set of tools that you're using? Or do you want to reinvent the wheel, so to speak? And do you want to reconfigure how your workflow operates in order to better fix a lot of the problems, the slowdowns that can happen, the inefficiencies that tend to grow over time? All of our processes just sort of get stretched out and longer with time. It's, I think, just part of human nature. This is a wonderful opportunity to say, hey, let's reevaluate our processes. What is important? What is not so important? What is something that we really don't like? What is something the help desk doesn't really like? And how can we fix that as a part of this lift and shift to a wholly new platform? And so this goes through all of the various considerations that you have there. There are many, and we'll talk about those in just a little bit. We also talk about organization and location creation inside of NinjaOne. And so if we go down to the very bottom here, I do want to call out this particular dojo article. This is a community post. This is from Luke Whitelock, who is a director of product management here at NinjaOne. And he came up with this script that is designed to create the organizations and locations inside of NinjaOne if you have not already done so. Now, we do have an organization import here. And so you do have the ability to just take a list, a CSV of organizations, and you can copy and paste it in here, and that will go ahead and create up to 1,000 organizations in one go. So it's very easy to get the organizations created. However, if you are an MSP with many organizations, and those organizations, those clients, also have a lot of different locations, this is where using the API can be very helpful. So in here, if it's just organizations and all those different clients only have one location, hey, nice and easy, we can do it in here. If you're using the PowerShell script right here that leverages the API, this presumes that you have both a lot of organizations and then a lot of locations that are kind of children to those organizations or to those clients. So that's where you're going to see the most value here, is obviously if you're an MSP and you have a lot of different locations that you want to create all in one shot. Now, one thing I would recommend, when you initially start a brand new NinjaOne division, there's going to be one single organization in here. It's going to be called internal infrastructure. And that organization I would recommend using as a template, as a placeholder. You can go ahead and configure that organization. And you can set your NinjaOne remote settings right here. You can set your backup settings. You can set your policy mapping settings, which map to individual device roles, like an Active Directory server or an API server. I could go ahead and have separate policies be assigned to those distinct device roles. The point is you want to set this as your template, and then when you import right here, you can say, use the settings from, in this case, Bill's Maple Leaf Diner, but in your case, it's probably going to be that internal infrastructure organization that we give you over the. And so we just need to go ahead and select our various options here that we do want to copy whenever we create these organizations, and then we import. And so if we've enabled NinjaOne Remote, if we've enabled automatic node approvals, if we have set our policy mappings, it'll go ahead and copy all of those settings to any of the organizations that we have in here. And so that just saves you a step as opposed to having to come here and edit settings here later. So make sure you do that. And then as a part of using this PowerShell script, you can do the exact same thing. You can say copy the settings from a particular organization. And you just have to go ahead and add in the name of your organization that you want to use as a template. And so as you're spinning up your environment, this is going to create all of your organizations. It's going to create all of your locations. And it's also going to propagate the Ninja Remote settings, the policy mapping settings, and the node approval settings that you want as a part of this process, creating all these various organizations and locations. I see a question here from Troy in the chat. Just a reminder, it's much easier to keep track of things in the Q&A section. But Troy says, are these automated scripts or just scripts for how things work? So in this section here, the NinjaOne Academy, the scripts that we would see right here, these are NinjaOne agent deployment scripts by operating system. So Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, these would be scripts that you would use to push through another RMM tool to install the NinjaOne agent as a part of migrating into NinjaOne. And then the second question Troy had was about PowerShell over AI. Maybe that was supposed to be API. But yes, this PowerShell script right here, which I will go ahead and I will make sure is dropped into the chat. But this script right here is something that you would use on a device to create all the organizations via API instead of doing it inside of this section here. And again, the primary use case for why you would do this is that you're an MSP with a lot of organizations, and those organizations have multiple locations underneath them. There's not really, I think, a lot of value if you're an MSP with a lot of clients who only have one location with this method. I think it really only is effective using the API to create the organizations and locations. I think that's really only necessary if you're doing so with a lot of locations that are underneath your client organizations. Cole says, is there a way to copy an org in the API with a parameter, or do we need to code it? Not using this PowerShell script. So this would be a way for you to copy an organization. There's no direct command for that in the API, but this workflow right here, this PowerShell script that we're seeing, this would have the same effect. If you said, I want to copy settings from Luke's testing, and then you had your CSV that had an organization with Luke's testing 2 and Luke's testing 3, it would copy the organization as is, just with your new names. So I'm not quite sure if that was your question, Cole, but I hope it gives you some insight there. And John, I see your question here, but I want to wait a little bit to get a little deeper into the webinar before we get to that. So another thing we want to make sure we do as soon as we get into a brand new Ninja environment is obviously turn on, all the products we're going to be using. Of course, NinjaOne Remote. If you're going to be using NinjaOne MDM, make sure you do both Android and Apple, assuming you are managing both of those. I would certainly want to recommend turning on the warranty tracking feature. This is an included feature that tracks warranties for Dell, Toshiba, Lenovo, HP, and Microsoft. So I really don't see any reason not to have it on. I would also want to turn on the NinjaOne AI feature right here. And that means that I could do autonomous patching where I have AI providing a guardrail in case there are patches available that have problems, like a caution flag that recently happened with, I believe, the cumulative update for October recently. But we would want to make sure we turn on all of our products right here to be able to make sure that everything is going to work right in our environment, that we have remote access, that if we're backing up our devices, that it is in fact backup. Dalton has a question. Warranty tracking is included with standard NinjaOne licensing, just endpoints. Is that correct? Yes, Dalton, that is my understanding. Warranty tracking is something that we do include. I got a follow up here from Cole. Cole is saying N8N to do one workflow for moving clients, locations, EDFs. That's why I said not with this script. So yeah, sounds like custom code in N8N would be best. Yes, there's not a way to wholly lift and shift or copy all attributes of an organization. You are somewhat limited in the attributes you can copy, which would again be policy mappings, node approval settings, and the NinjaOne remote settings that you've configured. So that would copy, but it wouldn't copy the client devices. It would copy the locations. It would not copy the contents of your EDFs. It would only have the custom fields that you've already created. So the custom fields would be present, but you would not be able to have the values copied. You would need to have code in N8N that took those EDFs from the other organization, moved it into your target organization, and then also move the devices via API into your new organization. That would be the way I'd recommend. And if we go into the API here, you would want to leverage the update device endpoint, which I think I scrolled right past. But there is an update device information patch right here. And so you could go ahead and change the organization ID right there. That would be how you would move the device to a different organization or location. So now we've set up all the applications that we want to utilize here inside of NinjaOne. We've created our organizations and we've created our locations either by importing from this menu here or by using the PowerShell script that I talked about right here. Another thing that I would recommend turning on. Let's go into the general settings right here and then scroll down and you'll see the agent installer option right there. If we edit this, there are two settings here that I would recommend turning on. It is automatic token creation right there and installer management. So if you've been with NinjaOne for some time, you remember that The way to deploy a device used to be that you came in to add a computer for Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. You selected your organization, you hit generate the installer, and you got the option to either copy the link or download the MSI. The difficulty with this is that when you download the MSI, it is hard coded to the organization and location that you see here. And it can be kind of annoying to generate all the installers that you need. You can also copy the link, but the link would expire. We now have a new method, and that new method here is something you'll see under devices and then agent installers. This is a generic agent. This is something we've had for most of this year now, and it gives you the ability to apply a token to a generic installer, and that token is going to dictate which organization, which location, and which device role the device is going to register with. And you can see these tokens right here. There's my token. It is active. If I wanted to revoke it, I would have the option to come down here and revoke it. I have my options here of just Windows because this is a custom Windows device role, an AD server role. So that's why I'm not seeing this for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Now here I have my installer URL. I can copy that. I'll be able to download that. I have a basic PowerShell command right here that will go ahead and download the generic installer and then apply the token that we see right here so that I'm able to, or so that the endpoint is going to register to the proper organization. In this case, Bill's Maple Leaf Diner. It's going to be going to the Pickering store, and it's going to be registering as an Active Directory server. So let's back up a little bit. I created a custom role. Why did I do that? So let's go into administration and then devices and roles. I'm going to scroll down here. You'll see that we've got Linux, Linux server, Mac workstation, Mac server, and then down here at the bottom, I have Windows workstation and Windows server. And you can see that out of the box, Windows desktops and laptops, desktop and laptop as a subcategory, and then Windows Server, those would be the three default device types or device classes that you get out of the box. You get the exact same for Linux, the exact same for Mac, the exact same for Windows. NinjaOne is going to try and identify which device type those devices are. Is it a server? Is it a laptop? Is it a desktop? So for any operating system, Windows, Mac, or Linux that you install, NinjaOne will attempt to do its best guess of what type of device that is. However, there are certainly situations where you need to go ahead and you want to assign a specific device role to a particular type of endpoint. And in my experience, I think point of sale systems is a great example of this. I used to manage them. They're different from a typical workstation, right? But they're not quite a server. And by that, I mean, when a point of sale goes offline, I generally don't care about a regular laptop or desktop that goes offline because I expect people to eventually, at some point, turn off their laptops. But with a point of sale, that's supposed to be always online. And so I want maybe a higher degree of monitoring and alerting whenever that device is going to go in an offline state. But again, it's not going to be a server, so I have this middle ground there. And so what I would do here is I would create a point of sale like I have right under my Windows desktops and laptops role. So this is operating as a workstation, but I'm treating it as a distinct device type. Now, the reason for this, why I would want to do this, is it gives me the option to come into my policies here. If you use Ninja for any great length of time, you will understand that the policy is absolutely critical to regular operation. I don't think you can spend more than 5 or 10 minutes in NinjaOne and not come across some sort of policy setting, whether you're being impacted by it or whether you have to go and configure it. And so what we can do here is create a point of sale policy right here. And so now this gives me the option to have distinct policy settings around alerting, around automations, around when I'm patching the operating system, around when I'm patching software, around when I'm backing up this device. I get just a complete ability to control the device configuration from here, and I'm doing it in a way that is completely separate from my other laptops, from my other desktops, or from my other servers. Now, what I would do in this particular case, I would then go into my organizations and I would say, hey, for a point of sale right here in Bill's Maple Leaf Diner, I need to make sure that any device that registers as that point of sale gets the proper policy. And so now anybody who registers as a point of sale to Bill's Maple Leaf Diner, they are going to get the point of sale policy that I have assigned here. And so that goes to show how you can take the tokens that we saw earlier and have them essentially make sure that all of your devices, as they are onboarded into NinjaOne, they have all the right settings. They're going to the right spot. They're going to the proper policy. They are assigned the proper device role. There's no hunting and sorting and trying to figure out what is this device? What does this one do? Uh, it just goes to the right spot. Now, of course, this is contingent on some of that planning that I mentioned. Uh, you want to look at your current environment and go, how many distinct device types do I have? Of my devices that are Windows servers, are they all servers or do they break down in some way to where some of them are library management servers? Some of them are Active Directory servers. Some of them might be an API server. Some of them might be application servers. And so if you need to treat those device types differently inside of NinjaOne, that's where having these distinct device roles that we see right here for a point of sale, for an API server or an AD server, that's where this really comes in handy because it allows you to map the policies to these devices in a distinct way, as opposed to saying, well, we're just going to install the agent and then we'll figure it out later. We'll figure out what device type is which. I think it's way better to kind of figure this out at the inception as you're configuring your environment instead of onboarding everybody and then saying, okay, well, let's kind of figure out where they need to go. Jeremy has a question. So we cannot layer policies, only one policy per device. Jeremy, that is absolutely correct. Every device is only going to see its policy, a single policy that it is going to adhere to. And so if we go to the device level here, like my laptop, I can see that I am on the Steve's Snowboard Rentals policy. And so, but below that, I can see I have some overrides. So what has happened here is I've been assigned a policy, but there has been some individual change made to this device. So I have my policy here, but if I want to come and override a particular setting on just this device, like I have right here, you can see this one line item here for the print spooler being down. I have overridden that. And so what I have the option of doing here is hovering over that overridden option there and hitting revert, and then I'm back in compliance with my parent policy setting. So that is to say, there's only one policy that can be assigned to a device, but there is the element of inheritance that can help you manage everything from the top down. If you look at my policy set up here, you can see I have my overall Windows workstation policy right here, and then I'm inheriting from that for each of my client policies. Now, I would recommend that where settings are the same, keep those settings the same. There's not necessarily a need to create a client policy for every single customer that you might have as an MSP. Where you need to change policies is where they deviate. And where do they deviate? It's typically going to be with regards to your alerting, to your automations, to your patching of either the operating system or software, and then to a lesser extent, your backups, your antivirus. That's where you're going to see deviations. In my experience, I'm typically seeing deviations in what you want to alert on, automations, and patching. That is where I see the most variance in policies. And where you have the variance in policies, that's where you then have to create these deviations, these branching child policies, to where I have underneath here my second level, all my individual clients. And then for this client down here, they actually have a different location that I need to treat differently in some way. And so I actually have a third level here. So in this case, I have a grandparent right here, 1A. I have several parents, 1B, and then I have my 1B1, which is going to be my grandchild policy in this case. And so what I could do is make a change here at the very top level. Any change that I make here propagates down to my child policies that are inheriting from this particular policy. But at the same time, I get that individual level of inheritance to where I can go into Bill's Maple Leaf Diner and say, well, hey, they don't care about BitLocker at this location, so let's go ahead and uncheck that condition. And therefore, we're not going to be monitoring, alerting, and creating tickets off of BitLocker for any devices that are on this particular policy. So, Jeremy, I hope that answers your question. You don't layer the policies per se yet, but there is that parent-child, grandparent-parent-child layer level of inheritance that it does help you manage. But ultimately, the device only, in quotes, sees a single policy. I will plug a little bit that we have a new feature coming out. It's going into, I believe, a beta in the 11.0 release, and it's called Dynamic Policies. And this is going to give you a little bit more of a layering capability. The initial implementation of this in the beta is going to be for Windows patching and for scheduled automations. And so you'll be able to set patching schedules that will be assigned based off of an organization, based off of a tag, based off of a custom field value. That'll give you a way more granular ability to assign individual policy slices as opposed to just these big policies that I call monolithic blocks, monolithic objects. They're just these giant settings, and that you can only pass down the single policy to a device. With the dynamic policies, you get that granularity that I think a lot of managed service providers have brought up that they need. Misty has a question. Can you change the agent policy or role after the initial install? Absolutely. You 100% can change the policy. You can change the policy 100 times if you want. You can change the device role 100 times. You absolutely can do that. Uh, in this case, just go to the devices menu, select a device, and then we can edit. And I can edit the policy. I can edit the organization or the location. I can edit the device role. I can assign a user, a tag, asset status. All of that can be done from this devices menu, or I could click into the device if I wanted to do it there as well. So you absolutely can move the agents, to different orgs, to different locations. You can assign them different policies. In my recommendation, I'm a fan of getting it right first, so if you can do the planning in advance to decide where everything is going to go, I think you're going to have an easier time of it. But I've absolutely seen people do this a different way, where they essentially just push one giant organization to all their clients and then they just sort out everything later. Is it something I would do? Maybe not. Is it something that you can do? Absolutely. So yeah, you have a lot of flexibility inside of Ninja to get where you need to go, Misty. Zachary says, can we change that token ID later through a script? Let's say through a GPO, maybe a computer is set up as a general computer for an org, but then they move it to another location via Active Directory. Can it be updated after creation to go to the final location? So you can do that. You wouldn't really update the token ID uh, on the device itself. That wouldn't be what we would recommend. I think if that's what you mean. We wouldn't recommend changing that on the device itself after the agent has already been installed. We would recommend maybe that you use scripting to put the current OUs that that device belongs to into a custom field and then use the API to move the device to the proper organization or location that it needs to be in. I think that would be my recommendation there. If you're talking about changing the token ID inside of a GPO, uh, you know, on the domain controller, like you just want to change it so that future devices go to the right spot, that's absolutely doable. But yeah, you would just need to monitor the OU via custom scripting, and then you would have the ability to use the API so that NinjaOne would say, hey, you're in this OU, then this OU maps to this organ location, and we'll move you over there. So absolutely doable. You would need to do the API server workflow for this. And that is going to be on Luke's site, mspp.io. Go to Introducing Automated Documentation and then the Getting Started section here. And this will walk you through how to get an API server set up, which is what I would recommend for any kind of moving devices to different orgs, locations, assigning different policies to devices. That's what I would recommend is using this type of workflow. Alicia says, does NinjaOne have a dedicated proxy service that could be deployed on a jump box for systems that can't have direct access to allow the remote agent on them? We do support operating through a proxy, but we wouldn't configure it ourselves. So it wouldn't be a NinjaOne proxy. We would just operate through a proxy that you already have in place. But NinjaOne absolutely can operate through a proxy. There is some limited functionality as a result of this. If you search for proxy in the Dojo documentation here, you can see the supported functionality over proxy. I think one thing that doesn't work is going to be the third-party patching and the backup. But you can see that we've got most of the functionality covered through the proxy today. Yeah, Jacob is asking kind of a similar question that Zachary was asking earlier. Is it possible to change role and location tokens with PowerShell to try and automate some sort of mirroring of roles and policies in AD? We moved computers around sometimes and want to automate this as best as we can with a single organization. Jacob, same answer to Zachary. It's absolutely possible, but you would need to use custom scripting so that the device is going to know what OU it is a part of. And then you would need to create some sort of mapping that determines what OU corresponds to which location, and then have it move, the API server move based off of that. So maybe the server would run a script every hour, and based off of the OU mappings, it would say, hey, these devices need to move to this location, and it would do it. So absolutely possible. I know in the Discord, there is a move devices script. I know I've posted one in the past. So yeah, absolutely some basics out there that you can use to make that happen. Uh, Blevin says, I am an MSP with only remote capabilities through Beyond Trust. I basically just need to migrate client workstations and servers once I set up organizations. I'll be starting from scratch. What is the device migration process? So yep, very easy. In your case, Blevin, what I would do is go and create your various organizations. And again, you can do that by going into organizations, import, go ahead and if you have a CSV with a list of your different clients, just paste them in there. Uh, Set your template organization. And so, you would use that internal infrastructure organization that I mentioned to go ahead and configure your Ninja remote settings, your policy mapping settings, and your node approvals. You would import, you would say, I want to copy from my template organization. For example, this is Bill's Maple Leaf Diner that I would use here. That gets all your organizations in place. Then you go to the general section. You turn on these two options right here, automatic token creation and installer management. And at that point, through Beyond Trust, all you need to do is find the client organization, find the token here, copy that PowerShell command, and then execute that through Beyond Trust. So absolutely something that you can do. I think that should be a pretty easy process. If you want to, let's say Beyond Trust doesn't execute scripts, you can go ahead and copy the link, open up our browser window, download the MSI, and install it. One thing I will mention, and I haven't mentioned it yet, in terms of deployment, we've been talking a lot about the scripting aspect simply because that's how a lot of people end up deciding how to push things out. But if you have an Active Directory environment, you can install the NinjaOne agent on a domain controller, and then you can do an Active Directory discovery job. This looks at your existing OUs. So I've heard a couple different things on OUs in the chat. So if you are looking to do a deployment here based off of OUs, this might be better than doing it via script. Now, again, this doesn't do anything after the fact. So this doesn't do anything for moving devices based on changing OUs. This is just at the time that you're initializing this deployment. And so in this case, I would say, hey, all my computers here, let's make this recursive. We've got these devices. I can go ahead and deploy through my domain here. That's a great option. And the second option is the Intune integration. So right down here, if you're using Intune, if your clients are using Intune, go ahead and add as many Intune discovery jobs as you need. You need to sign in with Microsoft, and you do need to select your organization and location right here. And so this means that for the device group in Intune that you're using to target for the NinjaOne agent installation, you would need to go ahead and make it so that it limits to only devices in this organization, only in this location, and then you run the discovery job and you deploy. This works great. Both the Active Directory and the Intune integration I have used personally, they work incredibly well. The Intune integration, especially, I'll say I don't want to set unrealistic expectations, but I did a test and I saw a 8-minute time from setting up this discovery job to then seeing the device in NinjaOne. So I don't want to set unrealistic expectations because it's another service and they're in control of how well it's going to work. But the integration in my testing has worked very, very well. Sean says, is there a template we can import from to set up the default conditions you are showing in the policies? So it's not a template per se, but I do have a spreadsheet. Look for that in the description of the YouTube video when it gets sent out tomorrow. I apologize. I am actually on the road this week, and so I don't have all of my monitors, and I don't really have the ability to quickly share things in the chat right now because I hid all the meeting controls. So be on the lookout for that YouTube link. I will put everything into the description. Um, Apologize that I am not really prepared to share stuff on the fly today. Arun says, I am new to NinjaOne. What is the best policy I can apply to my Active Directory servers? Uh, I'll not go into a workstation policy for one. That would be my first recommendation. And then if we go down to the server policy, you can see that we've got some templates in here. A lot of these have to do with domain related items. So services, failure to validate credentials. That's a good place to start there. I don't know if we have anything specifically for domain controllers in terms of recommended practices, but I think those are two good spots to start. Jeremy has a question. Can you set up a proxy site concentrator device per location to have it as a repo location for the patches? Yes, we have a patch caching functionality. You'll see it under devices and then cache. And so you can set this up division wide. So this would be, all devices, if they had network access, would be able to reach this device. You can do it per organization. So you can come in here and say, this will be my cache server for all devices in the org. And you can do it per location. We come in here, per location, you get the same policy mapping capabilities we saw earlier. You get the same backup capabilities, and then you also get the ability to establish location level cache servers so that all Windows patches will go be downloaded to your probe, basically your catch server, and then your catch server is going to distribute via the local network. So it does require that you have everything set up so that your cache is going to work properly. And we do have an article on that in the dojo that explains the whitelisting that you might need to do in order to make sure that local file transfers between devices are going to happen so that NinjaOne is able to patch. Devices still need to have internet, just as a good thing to know there. This is not for air-gapped environments. You do need to have internet for your devices, even though the transfer won't be of the patches, the patch data won't be transferred over the internet. Ninja still has to orchestrate everything through internet access. So hopefully that is helpful for you, Jeremy. Leo says, can we build and send reports based on the custom script that we run and save the output in a custom field? As long as that's a string value, yes. So in the currently, you have the ability to go ahead and create a data table report. And so the data table report allows you to send out a CSV. You can select columns of data from NinjaOne, and you can select custom fields to be included in that. So as long as it's in a string format, you can absolutely do it this way. Starting in the 11.0 release, you will actually be able to get rid of the CSV element. You'll be able to create the table and insert the table into a summary report. So you get all the nice graphics of a summary report, and then you have your tables in there as well. So it's much better looking to anybody who's trying to glean information from that report. If you're doing anything with HTML formatting, there's nothing we're going to be able to do with that today, Leo. We just don't have the ability to incorporate those custom formatted reports into the PDF reports that we see here. One thing that I like recommending is, or just one thing that I like, is we do have the knowledge base feature through NinjaOne documentation. And so what I do is I just have reports run on a regular basis in here, and then you can actually see them. And these are something that can be shared. So you could create public links. You can also share folders. So for example, I can go into my folder here and I can share this with specific end user roles. So they can actually log into the portal and essentially view a dashboard, is the way that I look at this. We talk about it as a knowledge base, but if you're updating this through the API on a regular basis, this is I think, a great way to kind of give them that dashboard feel where they log in and they're able to see information. Here's the automation dashboard that kind of shows you, what automations are failing, what's succeeding, how's everything operating across the entire organization, or in this case, all organizations. So yeah, that would be kind of a nice workaround there is if you do use NinjaOne documentation, kind of transition some of your reporting framework maybe to a dashboard framework using the end user roles within Ninja. Nathan says, might be a repeat question. I've only partially been able to pay attention, but is there a way to migrate an organization from someone else's NinjaOne environment into my own? There is not a direct way to do that. The only method I could offer is in the dojo. Mark Giordano, who is the product manager for our out-of-the-box scripting team, him and his team are responsible for all of the template library scripts. He has a script in here. I think it is in the community. Yeah, right here, reinstall or migrate the NinjaOne agent. Nathan, I would highly recommend that you take a look at this script. This is going to help you get your agents from your other tool into your portal, but it is not going to do anything for your other settings, EDFs, organization settings, anything like that. There's just no way today to migrate that. But this will handle the agent side of it. Definitely recommend testing this in one first, two, three, do it gradually and then do them all at once. Alicia says, what's your favorite item from Pill's Maple Leaf Diner? Love the pancakes. Uh, Tavan says, is Intune for everyone, or is that something we should reach out to our account manager for? I believe for now, if you are not seeing it in administration and apps right here, you will have to reach out to your account manager. I just talked to Josh Lambert, the product manager who built the Intune integration, and basically at the end of every day, he goes through and approves all the requests. So yes, reach out to your account manager if you don't see it. And then at the end of the day, Josh will go through and approve all the requests, and hopefully you will see it in here in relatively short order. Michael says, as an MSP, do I need to connect each tenant of each of my customers one-to-one for Intune discovery? Yes, you do. You do need to connect to each of the tenants individually. That is because the way the mapping works here is that when we set up this mapping here, we map to an organization and to a location. So each tenant does have to go into the specific organ location that you want to what you want it to go to. Carl says he doesn't see that in his console. I'm assuming you're talking about the Intune integration, Carl. So just go ahead and reach out to your account manager so they can get that flipped on. If you didn't mean Intune integration, please let me know what you meant. Cooper says, how robust is the wake on LAN functionality and how do we configure it in Ninja? When I say robust, I mean, could I theoretically wake the computer and then initiate a Ninja remote session to work on the device? Yeah, absolutely. If the device is asleep, if the device is fully shut down, there's nothing we're going to be able to do on that front. The device has to be in some form of a sleep state in order for it to be receptive for the wake. So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question. I would say that it's fairly robust as long as you're set up properly for it. And that means that you've got the network connectivity allowed so that we can send the magic packet. And it means that, yeah, the device is not going to be fully all the way shut down. Sean says, is it possible or planned to allow the management of devices that use SSH? Devices such as network switches, Linux VPS servers, FreeBSD, OpenBSD. Yeah. So the way that we would do that is we would leverage NMS, this NMS network discovery right here. Just specify a Windows-based probe like this. Set your IP targets. Give us the SNMP credentials, like the public community string, and then you'll scan. You'll find, excuse me. You'll scan. You'll find the network devices that you want. You'll add them into the console. You can see that SSH is an option down here, and so you would have the ability to actually, interface via SSH with a network device. We've been having some hiccups with the sort of virtualization stuff that runs our networking devices, but I'll see if I can find it in here. Yeah, you can see this little command line. I don't know if my credentials are right for this one, but yeah, you can see in theory what this might look like if our stuff was working properly. If you're looking for something else, Sean, please let me know. Carl says he is not seeing the cache for patching. If you're not seeing the cache for patching, it could be a licensing issue. This is something that is SKU dependent, so you will need to reach out to your account manager on that front. Jane is asking what the minimum number of client devices for a NinjaOne account setup is. It might be a dollar amount instead of a minimum number of devices. I am, as regular viewers know, not the person to talk to about licensing questions. So I would recommend that you reach out to your sales rep, and they would be able to let you know what the minimum is. What happens when Intune goes out of beta and becomes a paid product? Will all devices discovered remain on the tenant? It's not going to be a paid product, Rui. It is going to be just a part of endpoint management functionality within NinjaOne. So if you have the basic NinjaOne license, it's something that's within your scope already. Do the results of the NMS scan consume licensing? The results themselves do not consume licensing. The devices you add in as a result of the scan do consume a license. It is less than a typical agent license, but again, I do not know what the price is. Eric says, one org, multiple locations, including internationally. They do want to completely separate the management of server and Linux environments. Would you recommend creating multiple orgs, or would the child grouping and locations be sufficient? Hmm. There's probably a little bit of it depends in this answer. I think that in terms of user permissions, you do have the ability to segment, Linux workstations versus servers or Windows servers versus Linux environments. And so you would have the user permissions ability to separate technicians from being able to impact those in a single organization. Um, and then, of course, you would want to create separate policies for these as well, and then separate by policies for user permissions as well. So at first blush, Eric, I think that you can go ahead and do this all within one org. If the goal is to separate management from your technicians, you would have the ability to go into my account roles, my technician roles, like I am right here. And you can go into devices and you can say, well, you have the ability to use devices. Uh, you can not create any new devices, but you do have the ability to go ahead and access, a Linux server right here. And so we'll say, hey, you got view and update on Linux server. Um, and then you could go ahead and do the same thing with policies, only give them access to the relevant policies in this section. So I do think that it is possible. There could be, again, some nuance here that I'm missing just because this is chat. But yeah, I do think that you can go ahead and keep everything in one org the way that I'm looking at it, Eric. Of course, splitting out into separate orgs would also give you the same impact and might also future-proof you for a little bit. So that might be something to consider is splitting out into separate orgs just because you might need that in the future, depending on how much variance there is in between Windows servers versus Linux. Steven says, would dynamic policies be available for 100 devices or is there a limit? I'll say that it is a beta, so I can't say who is going to be able to be into the beta. I know that there are a lot of interested parties for obvious reasons. 100 devices, I don't think would be a problem at all. So yeah, there's not going to be any sort of technical architecture limit on this. But I can't guarantee that everybody is going to be in the 11.0 beta simply because it is not up to me. Rob says, is there any plan to allow for multiple levels of sites? We have a client that is currently acquiring new companies monthly, and we add the company under the acquiring company, but need to break out the sites for the newly acquired company. Um, so we have the locations. Uh, I don't know if there's any plan to really move beyond organizations and locations, which we currently have today. I would say right now, yeah, no imminent plans, which probably means nothing in the next year involving multiple levels of sites. So what I would recommend here is either adding it as its own distinct location under the acquiring company, sort of, it's not really a location, but it would operate as a sublocation in this case, or adding a separate organization that just sort of says, the new company acquired by company B, something along those lines. So no plans to add in that type of functionality in the near term, Rob, that I'm aware of. That seems like that would be a pretty big architectural lift for us to implement. But I would say that I think you've got a couple lateral moves here that might be helpful. Now, I see a question from Jeff here. Is there an easy way to install to Android devices? And so the easiest way, I think, is just to go to add a device, add a mobile device, select your organization here, select your usage type. Do you want to allow personal usage because somebody is doing BYOD? Do you want to make it work only, where it's wholly company owned? Or do you want it to be a dedicated device that doesn't have a specific user, something that's more communal, like a warehouse scanner? In this case, I'll just do the middle one and I'll generate the QR code. This QR code I can send out via email so somebody can do their own enrollment. I could also go ahead and just take a screenshot of this or copy right here, and I could text it to somebody, and they would be able to leverage this. So that's a great way to deploy out on an individual basis. Unfortunately, deploying out on a more widely at scale basis is going to be probably dependent on what type of devices you're using. But we do support Google's zero touch enrollment. We do support Knox mobile enrollment. Any sort of uh, method of deployment that Android supports, NinjaOne should be able to support as well. Dan says, is there a way to make bulk changes to several policies at once? So yes, but only if you have configured them in a certain way. So if you've configured your policies to inherit like I have here, you can absolutely make bulk changes by coming in and changing an existing setting, adding in a new setting here. And when you do that, all your child policies are going to have that setting. It's going to trickle down from the top level here to the second level, and then all the way down here to the third level as well. So as long as you're in that inherited policy structure, absolutely possible. And Sean says, is there a way to create automations and scripts for SSH or NMS devices, or is it only SSH access via the interactive shell? It is only via the interactive shell today. I think long term we do have more plans, Sean, to make it more like how we operate with an agent actually being installed. But I think near term for NMS, we've got some other things going before we are going to get to the ability to run automations and scripts. Bryce says, regarding the location field, would I leverage the API to make it dynamic so when somebody visits one office location versus another, the location field updates appropriately to the persona's location? Yes, you would have to leverage the API to modify the location. And again, you would use the section here, this update device right here, to change the location ID right there. And you would have to leverage the API for that. But yeah, that should be doable. If they're, I think the big thing is how are you finding out what is the office location? Is that based off of what Wi-Fi network they're connected to, what their IP address is? That's the only kind of question I have here, Bryce, is kind of what keys you in on that fact that they're in a different office location. It could be an ADOU as well. Yeah. Mateo says, is it possible to remotely connect to iPhones? It absolutely is. Now, unfortunately, I am on the road, so I don't have a device in front of me to actually show you what it would look like. But if I come in here into my devices and I look for an Android mobile device, you'll see my iPhone right there. And right here, NinjaOne Remote, I would click this. This would send a push notification to the end user. And they would say, yes, I want to share my screen with the technician. And at that point, you would be able to see the screen. You are not able to control the screen. That is not something that Apple allows. They don't want you to do it. They don't let you do it. So you can only view and you have to direct the end user around in order to, take action on the device. The end user remains in control. You also have the option of doing quick connect. Well, actually, I'll back up here. This right here, this presumes that your device is enrolled in mobile device management with NinjaOne. However, if you just need remote access on demand, you can use quick connect. And so right here, you can see I've got my phone here earlier. to have them download the NinjaOne Assist app, create the invitation, have them enter this code um, into the box on the NinjaOne Assist app. And at that point, you'll see this device go live and you'd be able to, again, connect and see the screen. Still no control, but you would be able to see the screen. And this is nice because you can be completely unmanaged. You don't need to have the MDM enrollment. You can do this strictly by virtue of the NinjaOne Assist app being present on the device. So yeah, definitely possible. Yeah, and Bryce has followed up. His mapping here is based off of public IP address, and I will say that I will post a link, Bryce, in the YouTube description when this video gets sent out. That does have a script that somebody else came up with, not me, but somebody else came up with a script that uses basically public IP address mapping through the API to go ahead and assign a device to, I think, an organization. But you could pretty easily adapt that, Bryce, for locations. That is available in the Discord, but I will find the link and make sure that it is in the YouTube description whenever that gets posted, probably sometime tomorrow. All right. Last question. We're almost at time. Jose says, I'm currently deploying the agent using an Intune win package with Intune. What's going to happen when I enable the Intune integration in NinjaOne? I would probably recommend disabling the Intune win package. That way you don't end up in a situation where you're duplicating the work. Ultimately, I would expect nothing to happen. One of these is going to get there first, would be my assumption. And so one is going to install, and then the second package is going to fail because something's already installed. So I really wouldn't expect anything negative to happen. It is possible, just lack of familiarity with Intune, it is possible that maybe those installations could step on each other and then it didn't work right. So that is possible. But I think I would recommend just disabling the Intune Win package that you're deploying and then just going with the integration for now. Sean says, is Quick Connect Ninja's product similar to GoToAssist, Beyond Trust, and others just-in-time remote support tools? Is this included or separate licensing? Yes, it is our version of that, and it is separate licensing. So you would need to reach out to your account manager or your account executive, depending on if you are a Ninja or not yet a Ninja. And with that, we are at noon. So that is the end of the webinar. Thank you all for your questions. This was tremendous. I know I made a lot of promises on resources. Look in the YouTube description. I have everything open. I just did not have the ability to actually paste it in the chat for whatever reason. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. And with that, I hope you have a very good rest of your day and take care.